In today's video, we're going to be talking about shoplifting defenses in the state of Florida. I'm Adam Rossen, founder of the Rossen Law Firm. We're here to help good people when bad things happen to them. And today, that's what we're going to be talking about is shoplifting defenses. So now remember, it's the prosecutor's job to prove any person guilty beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. It's one of the highest burdens that we have in any type of criminal case. I always like to say it's, these are the scales of justice. It's about 90 to 95%. It's their job. It's not our job to prove you innocent. And so when we talk about defenses to these type of cases, one is lack of intent. Have you ever just made a good faith, an honest mistake, right? People make mistakes all the time, honest mistakes, and we see this quite often in the realm of shoplifting cases. Have you ever been distracted, all right, on a phone call or texting while you're just moseying on down through the store? Do you have any kids that have been running around a store like Walmart, Target, Publix, anything like that? Right? Those things happen all the time, and sometimes you're just distracted and you go to checkout and you forget to take something from your bag or from your cart and put it on there. It does happen. And one of the issues or problems with this is these stores have loss prevention officers, and they're civilians, they're not police officers, but a lot of them are wannabe cops. A lot of them want to make a name for themselves. And what these loss prevention officers do is they're in plain clothes and they'll target certain people. They'll follow you around the store. That's called floor surveillance. They'll also do regular surveillance by watching the cameras, and they'll hone in on somebody who they might think looks like the profile of a shoplifter, and they'll follow them from place to place to place around in their little booths that you guys don't see in the back of the store, and they'll watch you and profile you. And then they might come out on scene and do floor surveillance. So we've seen a lot of cases with these overzealous loss prevention officers who, again, are trying to make a name for themselves. They get bonused, they get raises based on how many people they catch, and it's just, it's really not good. We had a case once. It was at the Boca Mall, a town center mall in Boca, right around the holiday time. And what happened on that case was we had, our client was young. She was with a group of girls. And there was also a young, maybe about 25-year-old ex-football player who was a loss prevention officer. He wanted to be a police officer, and he thought that this would give him kind of a leg up to eventually go into the academy. And he profiled this group of girls. He pulled my client out of the group, followed her around. This happened at, I believe it happened at Hollister or Abercrombie at the Boca Town Center Mall. And as she left, he started yelling at her. And then she got scared and started running away, and he ran after her. So he's running down the town center mall, chasing my client, yelling and screaming at her. And he chased her about 300 feet, about the length of a football field, and tackled her. And one of the nearby workers was so terrified, she called 911, and she called it in as a domestic violence call because she saw this big hulking man running after our client and literally tackling her to the ground, thinking she was a suspected shoplifter. She had nothing on her. She did not commit any crime or anything at all, but he insisted that she had something and she stole something. The Boca police officer came, did a terrible investigation, and still arrested her. It was actually a terrible case. Luckily, she hired us. We got that whole case dismissed. And I'm going to talk more about that case in a later video. But I wanted to give an example here of the type of case where these loss prevention officers quite often can just be out of control. So the next type of defense that we have in shoplifting cases is all about the value of goods. This is a very common defense in all types of theft cases. One of the, especially because as we talked about in another video, the value can determine if it's a misdemeanor, what level misdemeanor, a felony, what level felony. The problem or issue, though, with value on these type of cases is that it's hard for us to really defend, because what they'll do is they'll take the goods in a shoplifting case and they'll just ring it up at the register, and they'll say, well, this this bottle of milk cost this much on this day, and it's really easy for them to prove value. Some of the legal issues that we do, though, is how are they going to make the receipt that they ring up admissible in trial? So we'll have issues where somebody else other than the loss prevention officer, maybe a cashier, will ring up the goods that were allegedly tried to have been stolen, right? And there are certain ways where if somebody else rings it up and the loss prevention officer doesn't have all his documents in a row and the prosecutors don't do a business record certification, then under the Florida rules of evidence, they might not be able to get in, at a trial to make that receipt admissible. But if they have their ducks in a row, they're going to be able to prove the value. So that's a lot different than, for example, the type of case, if I'm accused of stealing your iPhone, well, electronics lose value like that, right? Very quickly, electronics, cars, things like that lose value very fast. They depreciate immediately. So it's very hard for them to prove value. And those are things that we'll talk about, that specific issue with value in some other videos as well. Now, the next type of shoplifting defense that we have is a Miranda violation, or when the police coerce you to give a statement against your will. And we see those Miranda violations all the time in every type of case that we have. But specifically with shoplifting, what they'll do is they'll put you in a very small room. They'll make it intimidating. And there's a big difference between a statement that you make to the loss prevention officer and a statement that you make to a police officer. So when we go back and talk about Miranda, it comes from a case, I believe it was in the 1960s or 1970s, long time ago, called Miranda versus Arizona. And what really happened on this, there's two prongs that need to be met. So number one is custodial, and then the second one is interrogation. And the custody or custodial element must be either the government or an agent of the government. So when you have a loss prevention officer who's employed by Walmart, Target, Publix, whatever, that person is a civilian. That person is not an agent of the government. So if a loss prevention officer puts you in this small room, grills the crap out of you, and makes you, give a statement against your will, well, that's not a Miranda violation because they're not an agent of the government. But if the police officer comes and does that, then that is, okay? Because the police officer, right, is an agent of the government, and you would be in their custody, meaning you would not be free to leave, to say, hey, you know what, loss prevention officer or police officer, no thank you, I'm just gonna walk out, right? Once the officer gets there, you can't do that. You actually are free to leave when the loss prevention officer tries to take you and bring you in the back. You can just walk away. You don't have to stay, but they don't tell you that, and they try to make it really intimidating. Now, the second part is interrogation. So it's not the typical interrogation that most people think of from what they see on TV. What it is it's really any question or statement that is likely to elicit an incriminating response. So even if they don't ask it in the form of the question, if they just say, hey, Mrs. Johnson, boy, that stuff really looks good on you, or boy, that I know it's expensive, so, I saw you conceal that, right? That's technically not a question. But then if you said something in, casual conversation, and then she says, oh, yes, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, please don't arrest me, right? Well, then that still counts as an interrogation. And so the last way that we defend shoplifting cases is just based on what's called a lack of evidence. These type of cases, the police do little to no real criminal investigation. They do nothing. They come to the scene. A lot of them are friends or friendly with the loss prevention officers, and they don't really do much. A lot of these police officers, they'll just take the loss prevention officer's word for it. A lot of times they'll just, what'll happen is the LPO will already download the video and from maybe one or two cameras, and that's it. And the cop will just collect it. They'll view it to make sure it transfers correctly, and they'll go, all right, we're good, right? So that's it. These police officers don't go, well, let me look at all the surveillance. You said that she was walking around the store for 45 minutes and concealing goods, but they don't actually look for it, right? They just listen to what the LPO says, take their word for it, and that's it. It's blind trust. So, these aren't the crime of the century to these officers. They really don't care so much about it. So they don't really do a good investigation. And what we like to do is, on any type of case, we don't play the dirty cop game unless we can prove it, which is very hard to prove. But what we do is we like to build up officers, and then we systematically break them down about all of the things that they did incorrectly or deliberately chose not to do, right? We know what their policies and procedures are. We know how to do, a damn good investigation, and we'll just use it and say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, and these officers are like, nope, nope, nope. I just trusted the LPO. I took what they gave me. I took their reports, and that was it. So that is a very common defense that we use, and it really works on these cases, especially if a video is missing, corrupted, or if it just shows the last 30 seconds of a 45-minute shopping trip. And then the rest is based solely on what this wannabe cop says, despite cameras upon cameras and evidence that should have been collected. And remember, that's not our responsibility to collect that. That's the police officers and the prosecutor's responsibility. If you have any questions about shoplifting or any type of criminal law in general, we love to talk to people. We offer free strategy sessions. It's much more than a consultation. We're going to review your case, get to know you as a human being. We're going to, develop our custom strategy while we meet with you, and really make sure that there's trust built both ways between attorney and client, and come with a customized solution. So if you ever have any questions at all, you can always call us 754-206-6200. Like this video, subscribe to our channel. We love giving free information out to everybody.